be clear in how I characterize this. This is mostly a protest. It is not, generally speaking, unruly.
Peaceful protest.
Peaceful protesters.
Peaceful protest.
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 Good evening, I'm Robert Cressionnie.
I'm John Gatsis.
And you've just tuned in to America in Danger. Thanks for joining us tonight. You know, I like to start the show a lot of times with a little bit of history. And this week was somewhat momentous back in 1933 with Franklin D. Roosevelt. And what he did that kind of set the standard for inflationary policy, monetary policy.
Right. Modern monetary theory, they're calling it today.
Modern
That's
monetary
the new,
theory,
yeah.
Exactly. And on this day in 1933, FDR basically took the U.S. off the gold standard. Now, what this did, and I've got a slide here. So
Didn't they actually outlaw the ownership of gold at that
they
time?
did.
Yeah.
They absolutely did.
Yeah.
Absolutely did. And I've got a slide here I'd like to run through right quick if Brittany will cue this up. All right. April 18th, 1933, FDR took the U.S. off the gold standard. The dollar, the value of the dollar, immediately dropped 11%, 11.5%. Roosevelt and Congress made it illegal to own gold or bullion.
Right.
The American people were denied ownership.
And the only reason that still circulates now, frankly, is because many people refuse to comply.
Yeah.
But that's why you can still get these $20 gold pieces from that period and from before, because people said, "I'm not turning in my gold."
Yeah. A lot of people refused.
That's
absolutely refused.
That's right.
And once Roosevelt had confiscated a good portion of the gold out there, he suddenly decided he would declare it to be $35 an ounce. Now that was a $15 an ounce increase from what he paid people when he confiscated it from them.
Right, nearly 100%. Right, increase in the value that they declared for themselves after stealing people's property.
After stealing people's property, that's right. Now, I know there are a lot of people out there who are very fond of FDR. I personally am not.
I always heard him referred to as fraudulent deficit Roosevelt.
Well, that's pretty much how I see him anyway. But you know, it just, as you were saying, that kind of set the stage for modern monetary policy.
Right.
Which, if you've done any study at all of modern economics, you understand that we continually go through these cycles of boom and bust.
Right.
Inflation, which we seldom have deflation. I don't think we had deflation since the 1930s.
I don't think we've ever really had it, and I have yet for anybody to explain to it why it's necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something we can get into a bit later.
Yeah, on another show possibly. Yeah. But you know, these things that Roosevelt did kind of interlaced with some other characters from around the world, some rather infamous characters around the world. Mm-hmm. And I think you know who I'm talking about.
I do. Pretty sure I do.
Yeah, that would be...
if not, there's so many to choose from that...
Well, this is true. There's no shortage of tyrants and despots around the world. But, you know, V.I. Lenin, father of communism, basically, and
Soviet communism.
Soviet communism. He had a quote, and I want to show you this quote, and think about economic policy here when you see this quote. Lenin said, "The way to crush the bourgeoisie is to grind them between the millstones of taxation and inflation."
Right.
Now, we have a administration right now, and
Just doing that very thing.
doing that very thing.
And, you know, we should parse that a little bit and dissect that. First of all, taxation and inflation are essentially the same thing.
Absolutely.
In other words, inflation is a tax on the spending power of your dollars. Okay, it's sort of, you know, it's scientifically created inflation vis-a-vis the Federal
Right.
Reserve and its policies of essentially creating money out of thin air where there's nothing to back it, which is only possible if you're not on any kind of a standard, like a basket of
Right.
commodities or gold. And, you know, these aren't trivial concepts, and we've been divorced from them for such a long time. I think people don't quite appreciate what that means, but, you know, money is supposed to represent a store of value. And
Right.
in the past, people thought of money, I say the distant past, people thought of money as having intrinsic value. Gold was worth the gold. It was worth those dollars, or it was worth the value intrinsic to that gold. The money itself had value. Now we have paper money, what they call a fiat currency, meaning literally created out of nothing. We have a fiat currency that is not backed by anything. The beauty of that from the standpoint of the architects of modern monetary theory and the people who want to manipulate and basically steal our wealth is that it allows them to create dollars out of thin air.
Yeah.
And the more dollars there are, okay, the less valuable and the less purchasing power they have. The economists call it, you know, too many dollars chasing too few goods.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I mean, yeah, that's another discussion too, because that's one of those phrases that doesn't fully.
Right.
It seems like they're casting a positive spin on something or a characterization on something that's fundamentally bad.
Yeah, right,
You know,
right.
Really, from my way of thinking, I've never had anybody explain to me this, explain this to me adequately. As a society produces more and more, why do the dollars should purchase more and more? In other words, you should have deflation. My dollars today should buy more than they bought, you know, 50 years ago when we had less productivity and less capacity.
One would think.
But the beauty of what they do is and I think they try and manage this in a way that is, they try and keep an equilibrium. They steal your productivity, keeping you paying essentially the same or slightly more in dollars for the goods and services you used to get for less. Ideally, though, I would think in a truly a sound money economy, your dollars would buy more and more as time goes along. Okay. They're not doing this, and
No,
they're doing
they're
this to destroy what Lenin called the bourgeoisie, which is the broad middle class.
Right, exactly.
Well, I think bourgeoisie translates from France as just the petty middle class. They call it, or the yeah, and that. You know, Marxists and Leninists and so they hate the middle class. They hate a thriving middle class because it's a threat and an obstacle to the things they want to achieve.
And what's interesting when you talk about Marxist, we have Ms. Cullors, the founder of BLM, is a devout Marxist. She claims that she is a trained
that's right,
Marxist.
Trained Marxist.
And we know that Hillary Clinton was trained in the Saul Alinsky school of Marxism.
Right.
So, we have Marxists in government. And if anyone thinks we don't, you really need to do a little looking at this stuff, because we do.
And you need to educate yourself about what Marxism really is.
That's right.
You know, it's been really sold in the universities as just a political and philosophical theory, but it is an extremely dangerous and vicious theory that, when implemented throughout world history, has resulted in gulags, death, large mass-scale depopulation through camps, death camps, and labor camps, and it's not a. The problem with it is it requires coercion to achieve its ends.
Exactly.
Okay?
Exactly.
A free people, as acknowledged and honored by the Constitution of the United States, okay, recognizes that human beings are, part of that freedom is economic freedom. You can't have economic freedom and not have personal freedom, and vice versa. You can't have personal freedom. And a lot of liberals like to say, well, I'm personal freedom, but I think the government needs to run the economy. Well, those are incompatible things. Okay, human beings are economic animals by nature, and it's important that a properly constructed social system recognize that and let them operate in their own self-interest through free markets. And Marxism doesn't do that. They end up having to put a gun to your head to make you do what they want you to do.
That's right. And you mentioned Marxism ending in gulags and death and what have you. And interesting thing about that is that's not some of the time. That's not 50% of the time.
That's right.
That's not 60%.
That's correct.
100% of the time that
Right.
Marxism has been
It's an
instituted.
inevitable outcome.
Inevitable.
And really, it's an inevitable outcome of any kind of coercive,
Yeah,
tyrannical
absolutely.
system. I mean,
Absolutely.
Marxism, communism, fascism, those are all fundamentally the same thing.
Yes.
Okay, I've always taken issue with people that put fascism on the far right of the spectrum
Yeah.
and communism on the far left. Where does that leave a constitutional republic? Okay, that's not a smart, that's not a, and I think it's done this way on purpose, but that's not a smart gradation.
Right.
You know, it should be total government on the left, which includes fascism, communism, all these other totalitarian isms. Anarchy on the far right, no government whatsoever. And then somewhere to the left of that far right endpoint of anarchy is a constitutional republic.
Yeah.
Okay. Democracy, which we talk about a lot on this show, pure democracy or you know, just majoritarian will, and that's really farther down here on the left of the spectrum.
Absolutely is.
Toward the socialist and communist spectrum.
Absolutely
That
is.
needs to be understood, and if we don't do anything else in the course of our efforts here, we need to educate about the term democracy and
Yeah.
what it really means.
Well, you know, democracy really is the precursor to Marxism, totalitarianism, communism, all of those things, because in every instance around the world throughout history, the people always voted themselves into communism. And
That's
you
right.
can't vote yourself out.
Well, what's the funny phrase? You can vote yourself into socialism and communism, but you got to shoot your way out.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Because power grows from the barrel of a gun.
Right.
And these tyrants know that, and that's why they want to take our firearms away.
Well,
because,
that's right.
because it's a deterrent. You know,
Wasn't it said that about political power grows from the barrel of a gun?
I believe that was Mao, if I
in the
remember
Little Red
correctly.
Book.
Yeah, in the Little Red Book. That let's see, who recently came out and said they love that Little Red Book.
There was somebody in the news. You'll have
I believe
to...
that was Patrice Cullors
Ah,
of BLM
well, of
fame.
course. Of course.
So yeah, it's not something that sometimes goes bad. It's not something that works on paper.
Right.
Don't fool yourself. It doesn't work
Doesn't
on
well.
paper because it's like calculating something mathematically and ignoring
The real world.
The real
aspect.
world
well,
constraints.
Really, that's a very good analogy, and it's one I like to give too. You know, I mean, anybody that studied, say, mechanics or anything, you know, they always teach like the way a spring works by teaching the ideal spring. Okay, they ignore friction, they ignore gravity, they ignore you know, losses of different kinds of friction or mass. Well, that's to make the mathematics simple. But if you design something based on those principles of that spring, it wouldn't work.
it wouldn't work. That's right.
And the founders designed a system that works based on an actual understanding of human nature. Okay? The
That's right.
communists and the Marxists, they designed a system based on an ideal concept of human nature, and it doesn't work.
That's right.
It never works.
It never works because it ignores human nature.
That's right.
You know, humans work for reward.
That's right.
I mean, it's no different than your pet. Your pet, you train them by reward.
That's all right.
So humans are the same way. We figure out something that we are rewarded with or rewarded by, whether it's a vocation or a profession or what have you. And that's where we want to go. When you take that reward out, which is what socialism, Marxism, communism, they all take the reward out. That goes to the state. That's not kept by the producer. That goes to the
Right.
state. When you take that out, people are not going to work.
Well, there's a foolish notion about the greater good and what these people have done. And it's amazing to me that people can sit back in the midst of the greatest, most prosperous country ever and the prosperity which came from that kind of a free market system and say, well, gee, it's not fair. We need to do things for the greater good. The greater good is served by free market economics and individuals making choices based on enlightened self-interest.
Exactly. You know, I'm fond of saying that if you protect the individual, then you protect everyone,
That's correct.
because everyone is the individual.
What is the most extreme minority there is? The individual.
The individual.
That's right.
And we are constantly bombarded with these group directives, and we're forced into these groups. And
Well, it's the identity politics now.
identity politics.
Very destructive.
Exactly.
Very
exactly. The you know, our Constitution. Our Constitution is not written for the groups.
That's right.
It's not written for the country.
That's right. It's written for the
written for
individual.
the individual.
That's right. The first document in history to do so, and the first government structure to recognize that.
Yep. And, you know, I might add to that that the Constitution is not broken. Our government is not even broken. What's broken is the electorate.
Right.
Because we continue to allow people to vote based on 30-second sound bites, based on what they're going to receive from the government.
That's right.
And based on promises from politicians. Now, if you want to be a good citizen, stop that.
Yeah.
Stop that. Educate yourself on the candidates. Contact the candidates. Speak with the candidates. Get involved. If you sit on your couch and you watch NASCAR, or you watch NFL, or you watch NBA with their
Right.
political messages, or you
Right.
watch HBO with their super politicized messages, and you go down and you vote because you saw something 30 seconds on TV, and yeah, well, he's got to be a good guy because he said that.
Well,
then
the problem, you start allowing people to receive government benefits, net benefits, okay, that destroys that whole paradigm.
Absolutely does.
I mean, it's an inherent conflict of interest. Okay?
Yep.
People are going to vote when politicians are in a position of promising me something for my vote that they're going to take from you. That's a problem, and that's something the founders did not sanction.
Absolutely
Okay.
did not. And we're going to have to hold that thought. We got to take a little break, and when we come back, we're going to continue this discussion about government confiscation of wealth and
Let's do it.
taxation and inflation. So
good.
stay tuned. You're watching America in Danger.
Hey, this is John Woodruff of Premier Equipment Company of Rocky Mountain Infield. If you've been shopping for a zero-turn mower lately, you've probably noticed that inventory is getting hard to come by. So come on down and see what we've got. We've got a showroom full. We have a showroom full of Exmark and Grasshopper zero-turn mowers, everything from commercial to residential, everything in between. We've got a good relationship with our distributors. They tell us when we sell these, they've got more on the way. If you've been in the market for a zero-turn mower, come see me, John Woodruff, Premier Equipment.
Premier Equipment is open during the week from 8 to 5:30 and on the weekends from 8 to 12.
Are you afraid to answer the phone because of bill collectors? A Chapter 13 plan can help. Chapter 13 allows people with too many bills to work out a debt repayment plan under federal law. It helps you control your debts instead of your debts controlling you. Chapter 13 stops creditors from harassing you and stops repossessions and foreclosures. It allows you to answer the phone again without fear or worry. Call H. Frank Allen, Attorney at Law, a debt relief agency providing bankruptcy relief under the Bankruptcy Code.
We're back. Thanks for staying tuned to America in Danger. Before we get into this next little segment, I want to give a shout out to my mother and sister down in New Orleans, Louisiana. They're watching via the internet. Hey, Mom.
That's nice.
You know, we were talking about taxes and what have you, and I know everyone out there hates taxes. I know I do.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know.
I know you do too.
I don't know of anyone out there who says, you know, this check just isn't big enough.
Right.
Let me make this check a little bigger to
Right.
send off to the government.
That's right.
Because I don't want what I work for. I don't
right.
want what I get paid.
Yeah, it's not fair.
It's not fair, you know. And if you hate taxes as much as we do, give us a call. We're taking calls. You know,
Right.
if you have something you want to say, even if
Please.
it's not on taxation, give us a call.
And even if you hate us and you want to give us, upbraid us, please. Give us a
That's
call.
right.
We
That's
want to
right.
hear it.
But anyway, I want to show this slide, and this is kind of a contrast between the previous administration and this administration. And I don't care what your political sentiments are. I don't care if you liked the last administration or you hated it.
All the mean tweets.
Doesn't matter. Right, all the mean tweets. It doesn't matter. I want you to look at this plan and you tell me which one is better for the country. All right. Under the previous administration, we had a tax rate 21% for corporations. The new administration wants to go to 28%.
You might want to note that that Trump actually, they dropped it from 35%.
Well, that's right.
So these guys aren't taking it quite back up there yet.
But they're bumping it up. They want to.
They want. That's right.
to.
And they fought tooth and nail the original reduction. Yeah.
Now, income tax and payroll taxes. Under Trump, it was 37%. Under Biden, He wants 52%. Now that's your income.
I assume that's the top marginal rate that we're
I'm assuming that's the top marginal
right.
rate, but nonetheless, it filters down.
Of course it does.
And all of these things, if you think that taxes are going only to the wealthy, then you really need to stop and think about how the economy works. Now, small business taxes, it wants to go up to almost 40%. Capital gains wants to go to 43%.
That's a big one there.
That is a big one.
Can't emphasize that enough. A lot of people, you know, I mean, they have a hard time understanding, well, somebody who's just earning this passive income off of investments. Well, first of all, those investments are typically made with dollars that have already been taxed. Okay?
That's right. That's exactly right.
That's double taxation, and those investments are in companies that their income is taxed. So it's really double taxation.
Yeah.
All right. Most retirees earn a certain amount of their income off of passive income, you know, from investments.
Yep.
And so that is an outrage. And talk about inhibiting investment.
Yeah.
Why do I want to put money into the economy, which that's another point. What do people think rich people do with their extra money? What do they do with their extra money?
Well, they bury it in their backyard,
right.
don't they?
Or they have parties and right. No, that money's in the economy. When you take your extra money that you have, your discretionary money that's left over after all your expenses are met, you invest it in things that are used in the economy. That is a much better way to grow the economy than giving it to a bunch of people who've never run a business, never even run a lemonade stand, to invest in companies like Solyndra and other boondoggles that completely go bankrupt. I just think there's been such a miseducation amongst the population about how economies work and how they grow. And if we can serve to expose a little bit of that and convey some understanding of that here, I hope that's something we can accomplish.
I hope so too, because you know, you work all your life, you build up a 401k, you build up a retirement plan. That money goes into the stock market mostly, and that's where we're making our money. That's where we're going to live when we get old, because Social Security's not going to cut it, because that's a farce. But
well, especially with inflation. Now, the inflation, I think you've got a slide coming up that's pretty.
Absolutely. In fact,
actually pretty frightening.
Well, it is. It absolutely is, and Brittany will bring that up for me. Now,
that's the one.
If you look at this, all right. In 1933, so the purchasing power of a dollar.
We're calling that the reference point. 1930. The dollar was the dollar then. The basket of goods or the purchases that you could make with that dollar in 1933 is represented by 1 on that scale. That's the $1 mark.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, if you fast forward to 2021, and I know you can't see it on the screen, but I'll tell you what that is. That's about $22 there.
Right. So what that says,
to purchase the same goods.
Right. That's right. That says that to purchase the same goods in 1933 that you could buy with $1 takes $22 today. But what's really important is where does it begin to take off on that? I know it's off the screen right now, but on the real precipitous rise is what, around 1960, 1965 then?
Yeah, the late 60s. You can see I brought it back up there.
Right.
That's the late 60s in there. This is 1971 there where my cursor is.
Right. So I was looking at that chart and thinking about it in terms of my own life experience. So, you know, I was in college in the 80s, and I'm thinking about how much just from the 80s, which doesn't feel like that long ago. I know it is to people who are 30 and 40 years old, but, you know, not to me. I mean, I feel like it wasn't that long ago. I was in college, okay, and I know what a basket of goods I could buy and what basket of goods I could buy in college, and now I'm looking at nearly double that, okay, or triple.
Yeah.
I mean, that means that the amount of money that you have saved, okay, is not going to buy as much in the future as you think it is. That is the deleterious, destructive effect of inflation. And
that's exactly right.
We are looking. Didn't we talk about this on a previous show? Bank of America, in one of its guidance calls to investors and other, high-level people, said that they expect a transitory period of hyperinflation. That's Weimar Republic stuff. And for those of you who don't know that reference, look it up. That was the government in Germany before the Nazis ascended, and they were starting to push around wheelbarrows full of cash, full of Deutschmarks, to buy a loaf of bread. Argentina's had hyperinflation. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen here, but Bank of America used the phrase transitory hyperinflation. I didn't make that up.
Yeah.
So even if right now we're looking at 4%, 5%, and 6% rates of inflation, You know, the Fed has held it roughly to 2%, and they call that okay. They think 2% inflation is good, and we've been having that year over year. But you take 2% and compound that over 10, 15, 20 years, that's a heck of a lot of inflation.
It adds up.
And it's getting ready to accelerate now.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you think you've got some money saved for your retirement, and you got a couple $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 in the bank, it isn't going to buy diddly in another 5 or 6 years. Okay, that's what these people are doing to us.
That's exactly right.
Make no mistake, they're doing it to us.
No mistake. You know, there was an interesting thing that I was told a few years ago, and it had to do with this, about the value of a dollar and the value of gold. Gold is something that holds its value.
Right, right.
Now, you may purchase gold and it goes from, you know, $2,000 an ounce up to $2,500 an ounce.
Right, fluctuates a little bit.
But really, if you look at purchasing power, if you go all the way back to the Roman days, when a Roman citizen could go buy a nice toga, maybe a hat, some olive leaves. I don't know. You know how they decorated things back then with olive leaves. A nice pair of sandals
at the Men's Warehouse.
At the Men's Warehouse, right down the street from the Chariot Emporium.
Right, and from the Coliseum.
That's right.
Where they were throwing Christians to the lions. That's right.
But you could go down and buy a full set of clothing.
That's right.
Toga, sash, whatever they wore back then. I'm not an expert on
their attire.
Ancient clothing attire.
Roman sartorial sensibilities.
But you could get that for an ounce of gold, a gold coin.
That's right.
All right, now if you go down to I don't know, Brooks Brothers, the Men's Warehouse, they've been around a long time.
Yeah.
You go down to the Men's Warehouse and you buy a nice suit of clothes, a shirt, a tie, some cufflinks maybe, some shoes, a belt, slacks. You know what? Same thing.
Same ounce of gold will get you that.
Same ounce of gold will buy that.
That's
the value of gold. It holds its value through time.
Right. And that's what's prompted the move into these cryptocurrencies, which frankly, crypto is a good term because it is cryptic.
It absolutely is. I still do not understand.
Well, and because of that, like Warren Buffett, I'm inclined to stay away from things I don't understand. Now, I understand it on paper, and I understand a couple of its main features. And one of the main features of Bitcoin and Dogecoin and all these other cryptocurrencies is that they have a finite quantity. There's only a certain amount of Bitcoin has been created. That's all that will ever exist. That is a sort of a digital analog to gold. Okay, the reason gold has value is because it's very scarce. People have always valued it. Bitcoin shares some of those properties. I'm less confident of its long-term viability because it seems ephemeral. It seems short-lived to me. Like we have a big electrical event. It just seems like it could disappear. Gold will never disappear. But with that stated, people are flocking into these cryptocurrencies because they're decentralized. They're not administered by central banks and central governments, and they allow people to have this sort of fixed store of value. There's an element of a psychological play on that, in my opinion. That's what makes me uncomfortable with it. I'm old school. I like the gold concept, but it does show there's an understanding among people, even younger people, that these fiat paper currencies issued by governments they're blowing up, and this is a way of engineering your wealth out of your pocket.
Yep.
Okay, it's to steal it through inflation, and I'm going to say it again. They're doing that to us.
They are doing that. They absolutely are. And inflation and taxation were very much tools of Lenin and the communists, as we talked about early on in the show. And you have to stop and think. The people in government now, they're not dumb.
No.
They're not stupid. They're not making foolish mistakes.
Right.
They are intentionally implementing these policies, knowing the outcome.
Right.
Knowing the outcome.
It's actually very scientific and engineered.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
And don't think for a minute that these people don't know what they're doing.
That's right.
When they're calling for this Green New Deal, when they're calling for the global reset, when they're calling for all of these ridiculous things, for phasing out fossil fuels, all of these things lend toward that goal.
Right, and in pursuit of that goal, they want to crash the dollar.
Absolutely do, and certainly we have the tools to fix this.
Right.
And as I said earlier, government's not broken. Yeah, we have some bad people in government.
Right.
Government is not broken.
The inherent structure of our system is
sound.
Not flawed.
That's exactly right. We have the president right now has engaged a commission to look at packing the Supreme Court which we don't need.
Right. To unconstitutionally make D.C. a state.
Yes, to make
For the-
D.C. a state.
And people say, well, why would they even want to do that? Well, because it gives them 2 senators. Just to clarify, I mean, a lot of times we say things that we think are
Right.
obvious, and they're not necessarily. If you don't spend a lot of time on these things, it's just like when I watch football, which I don't much, I often don't understand, well, why are they doing that? Well, there's a strategy. There's a secondary,
absolutely is.
tertiary strategy
Absolutely
associated
is.
with that.
They
So,
want 2 more
they
senators
want
and
2
another
more-
representative.
Which will be guaranteed Democrat votes.
Absolutely
Right.
will. Absolutely will. And when we come back from a little break we got to take here, we're going to talk about Mr. Fauci,
Oh, my favorite.
Senator Rand Paul, and
You took away his MD.
Dr. Rand Paul, and the Chinese biological warfare. So stay tuned for more America in Danger. We'll be right back.
This is Nicholas Bellamy at Premier Equipment. I'm going to talk about the 4540 Mahindra. It's 38 horsepower, 4-cylinder engine. The weight of this tractor is 4,000 pounds. This tractor is perfect for bush hogging, distance, small garden, a hunting club tractor. Comes with a 7-year warranty, 2-year bumper to bumper, additional 5-year on the powertrain. You can have this tractor for $200 a month, and we have 20 of these tractors in stock. Premier Equipment is open during the week from 8 to 5:30 and on the weekends from 8 to 12.
Are you afraid to answer the phone because of bill collectors? A Chapter 13 plan can help. Chapter 13 allows people with too many bills to work out a debt repayment plan under federal law. It helps you control your debts instead of your debts controlling you. Chapter 13 stops creditors from harassing you and stops repossessions and foreclosures. It allows you to answer the phone again without fear or worry. Call H. Frank Allen, attorney at law, a debt relief agency providing bankruptcy relief under the Bankruptcy Code.
All right, we are back. And, you know, Dr. Fauci has been at the forefront of this whole COVID issue since the very beginning.
Yeah.
And I think that what's happening because of his irresponsible statements, his foolish directives, his involvement in biological research, viral research.
Some have gone so far as to say he may actually be responsible for the pandemic, and there's a decent case to be made that's true. I mean, I'm not passing judgment on those proclamations, on those assertions, but I think it's possible.
It's quite possible.
Yeah.
I've got a video I'm going to show in just a minute. It's Senator Rand Paul questioning Dr. Fauci.
Also an MD, as you mentioned.
Yep, also an MD.
Yeah.
So this is not some, run-of-the-mill.
He didn't just go read a wiki article on virology and get some buzzwords and then go have it, and then do some brinksmanship with,
Exactly.
Fauci on the
This is
Senate floor.
a trained physician, a trained medical professional discussing with Dr. Fauci. And Dr. Fauci, you really need to listen to what he says, because I'm going to tell you what. His arguments are so political in nature. They're so typical of a politician.
Right.
He denies, but he's denying. He's pigeonholing what he's denying.
Right. He's circumscribing it in a very legalistic way.
Exactly.
It gives him some what they call plausible deniability.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if Brittany would cue up the Rand Paul video and run that, we're going to come back and talk about that. So watch this and listen very carefully.
Pay close attention.
Pay close attention.
Please.
So,
Dr. Fauci, we don't know whether the pandemic started in a lab in Wuhan or evolved naturally, but we should want to know. 3 million people have died from this pandemic, and that should cause us to explore all possibilities. Instead, government authorities, self-interested in continuing gain-of-function research, say there's nothing to see here. Gain-of-function research, as you know, is juicing up naturally occurring animal viruses to infect humans. To arrive at the truth, the U.S. government should admit that the Wuhan Virology Institute was experimenting to enhance the coronavirus's ability to infect humans. Juicing up superviruses is not new. Scientists in the U.S. have long known how to mutate animal viruses to infect humans. For years, Dr. Ralph Barrick, a virologist in the U.S., has been collaborating with Dr. Shi Zhengli of the Wuhan Virology Institute, sharing his discoveries about how to create superviruses. This gain-of-function research has been funded by the NIH. The collaboration between the U.S. and the Wuhan Virology Institute continues. Doctors Barrick and Shi worked together to insert bat virus spike protein into the backbone of the deadly SARS virus, and then use this man-made supervirus to infect human airway cells. Think about that for a moment. The SARS virus had a 15% mortality. We're fighting a pandemic that has about a 1% mortality. Can you imagine if a SARS virus that's been juiced up and had viral proteins added to it, to the spike protein, if that were released accidentally? Dr. Fauci, do you still support funding of the NIH funding of the lab in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, with all due respect, you are entirely and completely incorrect that the NIH has not ever and does not now fund gain-of-function research in the Wuhan Institute
Do they fund
of
Dr.
Virology.
Barrick?
We do not fund
Do you fund Dr. Barrick's gain-of-function research?
Dr. Barrett does not doing gain-of-function research, and if it is, it's according to the guidelines, and it is being conducted in North Carolina, not
You don't think
in
inserting
China.
a bat virus spike protein that he got from the Wuhan Institute into the SARS virus is gain-of-function?
That is
You would be
not-
in the minority because at least 200 scientists have signed a statement from the Cambridge Working Group saying that it is gain-of-function.
Well, it is not. And if you look at the grant and you look at the progress reports, it is not gain of function, despite the fact that people tweet that,
So
they
do
write
you still
about it.
support sending money to the Wuhan Virology Institute?
We do not send money now to the Wuhan
Do you
Virology
support
Institute.
sending money? We did, under your tutelage. We were sending it through EcoHealth. It was a sub-agency and a sub-grant. Do you support that the money from NIH that was going to the Wuhan Institute?
Let me explain to you why that was done. The SARS-CoV-1 originated in bats in China. It would have been irresponsible of us if we did not investigate the bat viruses and the serology to see who might have been
Or
infected
perhaps it would be
in China.
irresponsible to send it to the Chinese government that we may not be able to trust with this knowledge and with this incredibly dangerous viruses. Government scientists like yourself who favor gain-of-function research.
I don't favor
maintain
gain-of-function research
that
in
the
China.
disease
You are
arose
saying things
naturally.
that are not correct.
Government defenders of gain-of-function, such as yourself, say that COVID-19 mutations were random and not designed by man. But interestingly, the technique that Dr. Barrick developed forces mutations by serial passage through cell culture that the mutations appear to be natural. In fact, Dr. Barrick named the technique the no-see-em technique because the mutations appear naturally. Nicholas Baker of the New York Magazine said nobody would know if the virus had been fabricated in a laboratory or grown in nature. Government authorities in the U.S., including yourself, unequivocally deny that COVID-19 could have escaped a lab. But even Dr. Shi in Wuhan wasn't so sure. You in front of this group categorically say that the COVID-19 could not have occurred through serial passage in a laboratory.
I do not have any accounting of what the Chinese may have done, and I'm fully in favor of any further investigation of what went on in China. However, I will repeat again, the NIH and NIAID categorically has not funded gain-of-function research to be conducted in the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
You do support it in the U.S. We have 11 labs doing it, and you have allowed it here. We have a committee to do it, but the committee has granted every exemption. You're You're fooling with Mother Nature here. You're allowing super viruses to be created with a 15% mortality. It's very dangerous. I think it was a huge mistake to share this with China, and it's a huge mistake to allow this to continue in the United States. And we should be very careful to investigate where this virus came from.
All right, well, that was interesting.
I hope people paid close attention.
I hope so. And, you know, I thought it was interesting. Dr. Fauci denied funding of the gain of function research, which,
Right.
if you don't understand what gain of function
Right, you
is,
should define that a little bit.
gain of function is when you take a virus and you mutate it, you induce mutations so that it becomes more virulent.
Specifically with respect to humans. The objective is to make it more susceptible to human uptake and reproduction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what gain of function is. And gain of function research with viruses is typically done as a biological agent.
Right. That's right.
When planning on engaging in warfare.
Right.
Now, Fauci says they didn't fund it, but they funded an organization that was funding Wuhan.
Right, and money is fungible, which is an important word to know. That means that, you know, you can use it for any number of things.
Yep.
So it's kind of like when Planned Parenthood claims they don't use any of the money they get from the government for abortion. But they get that money, and so that allows them to use their other resources for abortion. So technically, they're not doing, well, that's the kind of argument that Fauci is using.
Exactly.
He's basically saying, well, we didn't fund gain of function research. No, but you made it possible for them to fund that research with their other funds because you gave them funds for something else.
Exactly.
Okay, it's no different than a person who receives benefits from the government using that money to go buy food, and they use their own money to buy weed and alcohol.
Exactly.
So it's the same thing.
That's the same exact thing. Now, Fauci also denies that there was gain of function research, but then claims, oh, well, it's being done under guidelines.
That's right. In the next breath, he said, well, the reason that was done.
Yeah.
Okay.
So which way is it, Dr. Fauci? You can't have it both ways.
Right.
You know, and then Dr. Paul, Senator Paul, reveals that there are actually 11 labs in the United States doing that same research.
Well, I'm sure people noted, if they were paying attention, that Dr. Barrick, who was the prime mover of this Wuhan research, was right over here at UNC.
Yeah, in North Carolina.
Right. That's right.
Where we are.
Right.
I'm not real wild about that myself.
Me too, neither.
But, you know, this is really, you just can't make this stuff up. You know, you would think that we were watching a movie.
Right.
A fictional movie, but the reality is we have an individual who's telling us that, oh, well, one mask is good, but you need to wear two.
After telling us not to wear any.
After telling us not to wear any.
Right, you know, I mean, these people have destroyed their credibility completely.
They absolutely have.
I mean, I don't really, frankly, know what to believe about any of it, so I don't believe any of it.
Nor, exactly.
It's just.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm not buying any of it.
Well, I'm going to tell you the truth.
Skeptical.
I'm going to tell you the truth. The CDC, the FBI, the Department of Justice,
right,
and Congress,
they've all blown their credibility.
They have no credibility with me.
That's right.
I'm not anti-government. I'm not an anarchist. I don't hate the government.
Right.
But they have no credibility right now.
Well, I mean, not that long ago, I had trust in some basic institutions, even if I didn't really like the political direction of a lot of the people that were elected.
Yeah.
Okay, but I pretty much in my point now where I just have to say that's all been blown.
It has. I have no respect for anyone in the DOJ, the FBI, the CIA, the intelligence groups.
None of the alphabet agencies.
None of the
the unelected. Well, I really, frankly, haven't had a lot of respect for those people for a long time. EPA, OSHA, all that crowd. You know, they all operate outside the Constitution.
They do, and they're all corrupt.
Yeah.
All corrupted. Now, you know, I mentioned that gain of function is a biological warfare research.
Right.
Type research.
That's right. No other purpose for doing it.
Exactly. Now, interesting that there is a Chinese academic, a Ping, I believe is his name, who came out and he announced that China has won the economic war.
Right.
They've won the trade war. They've won all of these things, including the biological war of 2021.
Right.
Now, we've got to take a little break, but I've got a video, and I'm going to show you that. And this is not from U.S. sources.
Right.
This is not from, I can't think of his name, the conspiracy guy.
Right. Well, that'll narrow it down.
Narrow it down a whole lot. But this is not from some wacko InfoWars site.
Not Alex Jones.
Alex Jones. This is not from InfoWars.
Right,
this is
right.
not some wacko that's recorded this. This is a legitimate news agency.
Through state-run television in communist China.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, when we come back from break, we've got to take a little break, but when we come back, I want to show you this video. And the key thing here is the biological warfare aspect.
I couldn't agree more.
Of communist China.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a little break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is John Woodruff of Premier Equipment Company in Rocky Mountain Infield. Been shopping for a zero-turn mower lately. You've probably noticed that inventory is getting hard to come by. So come on down and see what we've got. We've got a showroom full. We have a showroom full of Exmark and Grasshopper zero-turn mowers. Everything from commercial to residential, everything in between. We've got a good relationship with our distributors. They tell us when we sell these, they've got more on the way. If you've been in the market for a zero-turn mower, come see me, John Woodruff from Premier Equipment.
Premier Equipment is open during the week from 8 to 5:30 and on the weekends from 8 to 12.
Are you afraid to answer the phone because of bill collectors? A Chapter 13 plan can help. Chapter 13 allows people with too many bills to work out a debt repayment plan under federal law. It helps you control your debts instead of your debts controlling you. Chapter 13 stops creditors from harassing you and stops repossessions and foreclosures. It allows you to answer the phone again without fear or worry. Call H. Frank Allen, attorney at law, a debt relief agency providing bankruptcy relief under the Bankruptcy Code.
We're back with more American Danger, closing out the last of the hour. And give us a call if you have something you'd like to say, or if you don't like something we've said. We're more than willing to listen.
Yeah, we'll yell back, but we will listen.
You know, I talked about the video that I've got, and this is it's a 4-minute video, basically. So I want Brittany to cue this up and run this, and pay attention to what's said about biological warfare in this.
A video showcases a number of curious comments from a pro-Beijing Chinese professor. One of the vague remarks praises China for its so-called achievements in biological warfare. A website sheds light on the links between Wuhan's virus lab and the Chinese Communist Party. That's as many question how deeply those ties go, and others speculate about the pandemic's origins. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Netizens are pressing for answers after a social media video triggered controversy online. In it, a pro-Beijing Chinese professor makes a number of veiled and curious comments, praising what he called China's 2020 achievements in biological warfare. Here are the details.
Curious remarks made by a Chinese professor are raising eyebrows online. In a video, he praised what he called China's achievements in biological warfare. Chen Ping is a professor of economics at a renowned Chinese university. He's been applauded by China's state-run media for his pro-Beijing remarks and has been dubbed an anti-U.S. warrior. His latest controversy comes as part of a YouTube video released earlier this year.
China's success in winning the trade war, technology war, and especially biological warfare in 2020 is unprecedented in history.
Chen described the year 2020 a turning point for China's modernization.
After 2020, the East Asian countries with the most landmass and power will begin the modernization process, led by the biological revolution.
His comments were soon posted on Twitter, sparking questions from users. Many doubled down on the professor's mention of biological warfare. One of them demanded further explanation, writing, "Please specify what biological warfare refers to." Another asked, "Does biological warfare mean that this was a planned strategic deployment?" Chen hasn't explained his comments so far. It was later revealed that this so-called anti-U.S. warrior is actually a long-term resident of the U.S. living in Texas. The discovery triggered heated discussion and anger among many Chinese netizens.
How deeply linked is the Wuhan virus lab to the Chinese Communist Party? More and more people are questioning if the CCP virus actually leaked from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And people are also becoming more interested in the lab's connections to the totalitarian regime. The Chinese language version of the Institute's website shows it has 6 CCP organizations, including a party committee, a commission for discipline inspection, and a communist youth league. The website doesn't say how many of the lab's 300 employees are Communist Party members, but it does list 4 party branch offices at the Institute. Even for retired staff, there's a separate branch office controlling everything. Under these branch offices, there are also smaller groups. One of the groups has won a provincial level reward in 2019 and got the title Red Flag Group. This year marks the 100th anniversary of the CCP's founding. The party planned a number of activities across the country before the anniversary on July 1st. CCP members at the Wuhan lab repeated their Communist Party membership oath at least twice this year. When people join the CCP, they have to take an oath that says, "I uphold the party's program, observe the provisions of the party constitution, fight for communism throughout my life, be ready at all times to sacrifice my all for the party and the people, and never betray the party."
If people are not a little bit concerned by that, then nothing concerns them.
Well, they're just going to float through life, and whatever happens, happens, and they don't care.
Exactly. You know, that whole thing there, that's coming straight out of communist China.
Right.
And, you know, they're celebrating their 100th anniversary of the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party.
Right, the People's Republic of China.
And they have quite an accomplishment under their belt, because in that 100 years, they've well topped 100 million dead.
Yep.
They've executed, killed, starved, facilitated the death of over 100 million people.
That's right, of their own people.
Of their own people.
Right.
Not to mention the ones in neighboring countries
that's right.
They killed as well.
That's right. No, that's to me that's very revealing, and I think you know, it may seem histrionic to go on about this China thing, but you know, there are some good bits of supporting evidence. When the pandemic first began to reveal itself, what was the first thing China did? They halted all domestic travel within their own country, but they allowed international flights to continue.
Right.
Okay, right there. That was an act of you know, considered biological warfare.
Absolutely.
Without any question. Did they create it and deploy it? I'm increasingly receptive to that possibility. But they certainly exploited it and used it to cripple this country and the rest of the world, but especially this country. And complicit politicians and functionaries in this country cooperated and are abetting that regime in deconstructing the United States. That's it in a nutshell.
I agree. In fact, I recall 2 particularly prominent politicians, one being the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, and the mayor of New York, encouraging people to attend the parties, attend the parades.
Do we have a phone call?
We've got a call, so we'll take this call. We got just a few minutes here.
Hello, caller. Welcome. What's on your mind?
Nothing but hair.
All right. Well, that's well. Then you can be happy about that.
Okay. Well, look. I've noticed that China has moved into Iran.
Yes.
And somehow the Chinese move into Iran has erupted into this missile strike out of Oman into Israel.
Right.
So China is definitely trying to establish itself as a world power.
Oh, and without question. We would all agree on that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, y'all have a good day.
All right.
Thank you for that call.
You know, that sparks a good point, because China is also moving into Africa.
Through the Belt and Road Initiative.
Because Africa is a continent rich in strategic minerals.
Right.
And China has a plan. And if anyone thinks China is just another competitor,
Well, that's right.
China has a plan. They have a published, written plan.
They do. And they're
to
very
dominate the
long,
world.
Right, and they're very long-range thinkers.
They are.
And I just want to put this out there. People who have all this contempt for United States hegemony, as they characterize it, and I'm not claiming the United States is guilt-free through all of its actions historically. But if people think they don't like the United States being the big kid on the block, wait till it's communist China. You're not going to be happy at all with that outcome.
No, you won't be.
Just, note to self, try and pay attention to the developments that are leading to that very outcome, and maybe we can start steering the ship a little bit more correctly.
That's right, because the Chinese have no tolerance for the Uyghurs.
Right.
Practicing a religion not sanctioned by the Communist Party.
Right.
They have no tolerance for the, Falun Gong.
Right.
Another little
religious sect.
Yeah, a little religious sect. They persecute them. They persecute minorities all over China.
Look, they execute business leaders who make a mistake.
Yeah.
Say what you will, our justice system is never that harsh with anybody ever. You can't even commit murder and be punished for it.
I know.
Okay, but the Chinese will execute business leaders for fraud, and I'm not automatically against that, but they do it with dispatch, and they charge the family for the bullet.
They do. Yeah. That's the thing. That is the thing. So
there's no liberty in China.
No, there is absolutely no liberty in China. And I think you had something you wanted to.
Well, yeah. There's an article that was written this week by a gentleman by the name of Angelo Codevilla, and he's a professor, I think, at Boston University or one of those northeastern schools. And he writes very eloquently about a lot of subjects, but he's got an article that he wrote this week called "Regime versus Regime," and there's a little short quote that I thought warranted reading because I think it really makes the point. The sooner Americans realize that we are being governed by people at war with our Constitution and contemptuous of ourselves, the sooner those people may be treated as the enemies they are. Now, that's strong talk, but that's where we are, folks.
That absolutely is. And, there are things you can do. Get involved.
Right.
Speak out.
Right.
When people come up with harebrained ideas at these council meetings, at school board meetings, what have you, let them know.
Yeah, call them out.
They make no bones about shouting us down.
Yeah, and don't tiptoe.
We need to oppose these awful things because they are awful.
Right.
They're not just, I believe in liberty and liberalism and these things. That's not what this is about. These people are totalitarians, and if they're not totalitarians, they're willing dupes of totalitarianism, and they're ushering this in.
And they might be salvageable, but they're probably not.
More than likely not.
But make your voice heard. You might be ridiculed at work. You might lose your job. That's a risk.
Sometimes it takes a little courage and a little boldness.
That's all right.
But I will tell you this much: if you stand up at a board meeting,
you'll get a lot of people nodding in agreement.
That's exactly right.
That are afraid to step out of the shadows.
That are afraid to step out of the shadows. And unfortunately, we are out of time tonight.
It is unfortunate.
I've enjoyed the show, John.
Likewise.
I always enjoy talking with you.
Likewise.
And we want to thank our audience for tuning in and our callers. And tune in next Saturday for more America in Danger. Step out there and get involved.